Xbox has been releasing a ton of games so far this September, and my backlog is already bursting at the seams. Still, I do love adding to that backlog, and Xbox have now decided to treat us to a pretty huge sale, which I really wasn't expecting. Today, we have some absolutely insane prices for a lot of different genres, including some massive AAA heavy hitters. Before we do dive in though, I do give away a free Xbox game as part of these sales videos every single week. All you have to do to enter is comment below, and I will draw one lucky winner in next week's video. Congratulations to last week's winner, just hit me up on our awesome Discord server and I will get that game right over to you. With that though, let's dive right into these sales, and I apologise in advance for making that backlog even larger. Well, I have to say, Los Angeles has never looked this gruesome or even this fun. Dead Island 2 drops us into a sun-drenched city swarming with loads of zombies, and instead of that dark humour you kind of expect from these experiences, it actually leans into a more over-the-top sort of mayhem. The combat system here is just gloriously gory, with melee weapons that crunch, slice and smash in ways that are both ridiculous and pretty satisfying. If you add in its quirky humour, a cast of eccentric survivors and an RPG-like progression system, and it easily becomes a playground of utter carnage. The core really does elevate the overall experience even further though, letting you and your friends also craft some pretty unforgettable moments in Hollywood's undead apocalypse. Normally this game actually sets you back around 60 quid without a sale, but right now it's down to just £13.50 after a hefty 70% discount. It's highly worth grabbing, and you'll have a ton of fun with this one for hours upon hours. I know that I've mentioned this game time and time again in the past, but walking through the doors of Hogwarts is still such an insane experience. Hogwarts Legacy lets you really craft your own student, learn spells, tame magical beasts, and even unravel some mysteries hidden deep within the castle and its surrounding lands. The deluxe edition, which I'm highlighting today in particular, goes even further though, adding in some nice extra cosmetics, and it's the lowest price ever, even compared to the base entry. For me, the highlight of the overall game though really was the world, and it's so blimmin' authentic to the movies and the books. The price this week has now been slashed down by 80%, bringing it down to just £15. Honestly, that's such astonishing value for such a great massive open world RPG that's steeped in wizarding lore, and it's probably my overall recommendation for this sales week. I do seem to have a habit of mentioning different simulators lately, but here we go, here's another one for you. On the surface, running a gas station doesn't really sound that exciting, but Gas Station Simulator proves that otherwise. Basically in this one, you inherit a rundown roadside pit stop and slowly transform it into a thriving business, one coat of paint at a time. What begins with sweeping floors and stocking shelves actually expands into managing your own employees, customizing the overall station, and keeping unruly customers in line. The pacing is actually pretty oddly addictive, with just enough chaos to keep you on your toes. It's one of those games that really blew up though due to a lot of YouTubers getting their hands on it, but surprisingly enough, there's actually a pretty decent sim here. At half the price this week is an easy recommendation, especially if you enjoy these sort of little quirky and unexpected sim games. Whereas this next game, called Deadzone Rogue, wants to keep you tense, cautious, and constantly on the edge of your seat. This one is a tactical roguelike where every decision feels like it could be your last, and it only launched actually a couple of days ago now. Even though it's new, there is still a lovely launch discount, and it's still worth grabbing at 20% off. Combat here is very fast but unforgiving, exploration obviously rewards all of you risk takers, and the atmosphere keeps you locked into that sci-fi intensity. Of course, like any roguelike, every run will push you to adapt, with loads of randomized challenges and also loot, ensuring that no two attempts ever feel the same. Unlike many indies in this genre, it really does nail the FPS gameplay, and that's somewhat of a hard task to perform these days, especially with juggernauts taking up our time like the upcoming Battlefield 6 and Black Ops 7. Ubisoft took Assassin's Creed back to its roots with Mirage, and it was actually a pretty decent success. Gone were the bloated RPG systems like Origins and Odyssey, and instead they were replaced by a leaner and more stealth-focused experience set in 9th century Baghdad. In this one though, you play as Basim, whose story intertwines politics, assassins, and of course personal revenge. The city really is the star of the show though, as it's back to that sort of dense and bustling environment like we saw in games like Brotherhood and Revelations. The game was such a great time, and it really took me back to the good old days, even if I really wasn't the biggest fan of those phase-like abilities. At £13.50 after a pretty good 70% price cut, it's more than just affordable and the lowest price ever. It's an easy recommendation, and we're also getting some brand new and free DLC very soon. Defender Rook doesn't waste time pretending to be anything other than what it actually is. It's a smart tactical tower defense roguelike, and it's bloody awesome. Each level in this one puts you in charge of protecting your kingdom's Rook, while waves of enemies will swarm the board. The twist is that it's just not about the towers, you also control your different heroes, moving them around like chess pieces to intercept threats and maximize damage. The layers of strategy do build quickly as well, so do you reinforce your defenses, upgrade your champions, or risk it all for some more gold? Its replay value really comes from those sort of ever-changing runs though, and it's satisfying in its learning curve. Right now, it's just down to £3.74, and for strategy fans who want a quick hit with endlessly replayable fixes, then this is a brilliant little bargain. Now, if you're looking for another brilliant bargain, then I have some cracking news for you. I've just launched our brand new website, xboxnation.co.uk, and you can check it out absolutely ad-free. So if you want to support an independent Xbox outlet, please head over, check it out, and you can even win a copy of the brand new FPS Metal Eden for joining our brand new newsletter. If you aren't interested, then I would love if you could still support and subscribe to the channel, as I have some awesome Xbox content coming our way very, very soon. Thanks so much to all the support, every single one of you are absolute legends, and let's dive back into these incredible sales for this week. Final Fantasy XVI was a really bold departure for this franchise, and it was fantastic seeing it finally land onto our Xbox consoles a couple months back now. This one though really leans heavily into action-heavy combat, with mechanics inspired by stylish character action games just like Devil May Cry. However, a very big positive is that it still kept that sweeping narrative, larger-than-life summons, and political intrigue that the series is really known for. The production values here are utterly jaw-dropping in this one. Everything from the voice acting, music and visuals all fire on every single cylinder. It's not cheap compared to other indie games on this list or even AAA titles, but at £30 after a 40% cut, it's still a worthy pick, especially as it's now the deepest discount it's seen since it landed onto our Xbox consoles. Minimalism meets brutality in Bad North. This real-time tactics game actually tasks you with defending small islands against waves of Viking invaders, commanding only a handful of units. The simplicity though is pretty deceptive, so don't let that put you off. Everything from positioning, timing, and reading the battlefield are really key to your survival and ultimately winning. Each island is actually procedurally generated as well, offering brand new terrain challenges and really forcing you to adapt strategies on the fly. The Jotun edition really expands on the original though, with more depth, some extra commanders and upgrades, and really makes it the definitive way to experience Bad North. Runs are pretty tense but rather short, so great for those little sort of bite-sized sessions, but they still carry a lot of weight about them. At just £2.39 with an 80% discount, this one is an absolute gem. Few zombie games really nail the freedom and tension quite like Dying Light, and with Dying Light the Beast landing shortly in September, this is a good one for you to dive into. It actually combines brutal melee combat with fluid parkour, letting you sprint across rooftops by day and nervously scavenge by night. This definitive edition though bundles in all of the expansions and DLC, turning an already massive experience into a complete survival package. Of course, the last DLC of Dying Light actually sets up the scene perfectly for Dying Light the Beast, so it's a good one to experience if you can. Co-op, of course, though, does make these sort of Dying Light games even more exhilarating, whether that's racing with friends across rooftops or just fending off the hordes. With the price now being just £8.99 after an 80% discount, it's really hard to ignore in this week's sale. For fans of classic JRPGs, we're seeing a nice 60% discount this week for Star Ocean: The Divine Force, and it really does scratch that nostalgic itch while adding some great modern twists. You bounce between two protagonists, each with their own perspective on a sweeping space fantasy tale. Exploration does feel quite liberating though, thanks to the ability to fly around the environments, and it does make dungeons and cities feel more alive than we've ever seen before in the series. The battle system really keeps pace as well, blending that sort of cool real-time action elements with flashy abilities, and also gives you some tactical pauses that reward clever timing. It's a pretty hefty game, and you definitely won't be finishing it quickly. It's filled with tons of side content, colourful characters, and just plenty of that melodramatic storytelling that the series is known for. At £24, again, it is pricier than some of these sales picks, but JRPG fans will really get their money's worth in sheer hours and cosmic drama. Shadow of War still remains the best showcase of hand-to-hand combat that I've ever experienced, and it still sucks that the Nemesis system will probably never see the light of day ever again. To give you an idea, the Nemesis system makes every enemy remember you, adapt, and then also come back with scars or even grudges, and it really creates rivalries that feel organic, and we don't actually see this in any other games out there. Combine that with fluid combat and fortress assaults that feel epic in their scale, and you've honestly got one of the most satisfying action adventures of the last decade. The Definitive Edition also sweetens that deal by bundling in all the DLC, so you're really getting the full package here. Normally, it'd demand a bigger investment, but right now it's sitting at just £6 after a staggering 85% cut. I love Lord of the Rings, and it's easily one of my favourite franchises of all time, so definitely buy this game if you can. City builders in space really don't come around too often, and Aven Colony takes that genre off-world. Instead of managing pollution or traffic jams like games like City Skylines, you're instead dealing with alien diseases, oxygen levels, and the hostile environments. The game actually challenges you to create a thriving little human settlement across different extraterrestrial landscapes, and then you'll have to balance the needs of your colonists with the harsh realities of alien weather and also the potential wildlife. It's less about endless sandboxing, and it's actually more about these structured missions, and it makes it really perfect for players who want goals alongside that normal creativity in the space. The best part is, it's ridiculously cheap right now, at just £2.50 after a massive 90% discount. Lords of the Fallen, the 2023 reboot and not the old one, delivers brutal heavyweight combat that's set in a dark fantasy backdrop. Its unique twist though is the dual realm mechanic, and it essentially lets players shift between the world of the living and the realm of the dead, and it has enemies and puzzles that are tied to both of these areas. Combat, of course, like any Souls-like, is pretty unforgiving, but it is fair and rewarding for those who learn the attack patterns and punish mistakes. Graphically, it's also a pretty good stunner, with its gothic castles, twisted landscapes, and also the pretty grotesque bosses that push the atmosphere front and center. The game did get an overhaul, which was very much needed, and it was pretty incredible. And while it hasn't unseated the god of all Souls-likes known as Elden Ring, it still carves out its very own niche within its genre. With a 40% discount bringing it down to just £15 is a solid way to scratch that Soulsborne itch. This next game isn't just another spin-off, it's actually one of the most underrated Witcher stories out on Xbox so far. Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales, combines narrative-driven RPG decision-making with card-based combat inspired by games like Gwent. You play as Queen Maeve, leading her forces through political intrigue, betrayal, and war. Choices feel heavy, shaping the fate of kingdoms and companions, while the writing is every bit as sharp as the main Witcher series. Of course, the idea of card battles may sound pretty niche, but are actually cleverly integrated, ensuring that they feel like a natural extension of the world rather than a gimmick. At £3.39, you're really getting a polished and story-rich adventure that many Witcher fans sadly overlooked. For this price, is an essential pick in this week's sale. I have to say, this next title really says it all. Squirrel with a gun is exactly what you think, a chaotic sandbox where a tiny squirrel wields firearms and causes mischief. Whether it's mugging people for snacks, blasting enemies off rooftops, or using recoil to launch yourself across the map, the game really thrives on that absurdity. The humour isn't subtle as well, it's slapstick mayhem in an open world, and it really dares you to break it in the most hilarious ways possible. You can kind of think of it like Goat Simulator, so underneath is a lot of silliness, and there's actually a surprising amount of freedom with the sandbox mechanics as well. It's sitting at £7 after a 55% discount, and that's actually the cheapest you can get this game currently, and it's absolutely brilliant. For me, few games really deliver comedy this chaotic, and sometimes you kind of need those pure nonsense games, and that delivers that in spades. So what game are you going to pick up in this week's Xbox sale? You'll have to let me know down below. Make sure to also go check out my brand new website, as it's ad-free, and of course we are giving away a copy of Metal Eden if you do join our brand new newsletter. With that though, make sure to subscribe as well, as I will be bringing you a ton of Xbox content over the coming weeks. And also, whilst you're here, why don't you check out the video on screen now? I did cover Borderlands 4 and the 10 things that you need to know about it before it launches this Friday.